today. We have a pretty jam-packed agenda today. I anticipate us using most of our 2 hours. We are going to start by doing some information sharing about the development of a statewide mentorship training that's currently underway, do a little bit of a preview of the December SBEC meeting, and then actually click in a little bit further to a few of the items that are on the December SBEC agenda, as well as some updates around the continuing approval review process, redesign, and then want to close out. We want to give a big thank you to folks here who've been providing input and feedback on ways that we can continue to improve this stakeholder engagement process. And so we had an opportunity to review your feedback and have tried to distill down some concrete next steps. So hopefully a lot for us to engage in throughout the morning this morning. With that, I am going to kick us off by turning it over to two of our colleagues who some folks on this call might have had the opportunity to interact with previously, but potentially not others. I'm excited to introduce Ali Friedlander, who is our Director of Teacher Pathways, and Ricky Harrell, who is our Teacher Mentorship Specialist. They are part of our broader EPSG team and are really thinking about ways to support our talent pipelines and really support our novice teacher development. And so they've got some information to share about an exciting upcoming opportunity. So I'm going to turn it over to them.
Thanks for that, Jess. And good morning, everyone. I'm Ali Friedlander. It's great to be in front of this group. I've heard a lot about EPSG and never joined one of these meetings, so really excited to see you all and hopefully get your input on this project that Ricky and I have been working on for, maybe like over a year now. Many of you on this call, I am sure, if not all of you, are familiar with the Teacher Vacancy Task Force recommendations, the report that came out over a year ago now, a year and a half ago, with recommendations from practitioners and system level leaders across the state about how to address teacher workforce and attrition issues in Texas. So these recommendations fell into kind of 3 broad categories related to compensation, training and support, and then also working conditions. And under that training and support category, there were recommendations to expand teacher mentorship and leadership across the state. More specifically within that, there were recommendations to develop a statewide mentorship training for cooperating teachers. So trying to pool the resources and provide a training for that group of individuals. And then another separate recommendation to scale the mentor program allotment that some of you all might be familiar with. The mentor program allotment focuses on supports for first and second year teachers and provides districts with funding to train those mentors of first and second year teachers, and then also supports them with some costs related to the training and development of those mentorship roles. There was last legislative session, there were some bills introduced around both of these recommendations that did not pass, but TEA was able to leverage some other funding to start working towards one of the recommendations of developing a centralized training for these groups. So that's kind of what I'm here to talk to you about today, about our work with this. I feel like this group, I don't need to share much about the rationale and importance of mentors and cooperating teachers in the ed prep space. We know that they can be game changers in the experience of our pre-service teachers, and the quality of those individuals matters. It matters who you're selecting and kind of the competencies, the knowledge, the skills that they're bringing into that role, but also the competencies that they develop to step into that leadership space. And that's kind of why you will see these key practices outlined in the effective preparation framework under level 5, instruction and support. We know that what makes a great teacher doesn't necessarily make a great mentor or coach, and there is training oftentimes that is needed to support that transition from working directly with students and being a rock star in front of your kids in the class and stepping into that mentorship and peer coaching role. And then beyond that, when we're thinking about our novice teachers, that baton pass from the ed prep space into the in-service space, there's a lot of support that our beginning teachers need. And there is, research that indicates that multi-year mentoring and induction programs can really have a big impact on the outcomes that we're seeing with our students, the teacher experience and their effectiveness and their overall retention. And so this is just, kind of reinforcing kind of the rationale for the recommendations that we saw in the teacher vacancy task force. We know there's great promise and also great need in this space. Jess, you might just need to click through a little bit here. I'm not sure what happened with our animations here. So we are currently working on, we took these recommendations and we are working on building out a statewide mentorship training that's going to address multiple mentorship roles across the kind of like pre-service and in-service space. So, across the top, you're thinking about your traditional candidates, your residents, then you've got kind of like your beginning teachers, your interns, your first and second year teachers. And across the bottom, you see a range of roles. You see EPP field supervisors and other EPP staff that support these candidates when they're out in the field. You've got those cooperating teachers and host teachers that have a big lift on their plate to make sure that these candidates are really putting into practice what they are learning in their coursework and have really strong, well-aligned opportunities to develop their craft and co-teaching strategies and feedback opportunities as well. And then we've got mentors and then district and campus leaders that support mentorship programs kind of in the in-service space, supporting these beginning teachers once they are placed. And in designing this training based on feedback from stakeholders, we are looking to develop kind of a comprehensive suite of trainings that really links across all of these roles. And I've got a visual on the next slide that will demonstrate this. But when we're thinking about those cooperating teachers, mentors, host teachers, oftentimes this might be the same individual, the same, fourth grade teacher or secondary science teacher that's, a cooperating teacher one year and a mentoring teacher the other year, maybe has like a first year teacher that they're supporting down the hall while they're also hosting a student teacher. So we're really trying to align and streamline this training. This is a very busy slide. I recognize that. I'll just give you a second to look at all the words and then I'll share a little voiceover of what this is. And so we are framing this as an optional training for participation that is available. Again, we're just trying to like centralize some of the work and some of the lift, try to build cohesion across these roles and address a lot of the challenges that we heard from our stakeholders. We are envisioning a school year 26-27 launch. We're going to actually have a pilot next school year and then a launch in 26-27. At that top level, we are working with a contractor who will be developing this training, and they will provide face-to-face sessions and implementation support and coaching to our education service centers. It's a lot of acronyms. I should have probably started with that. So that second row is our education service centers who will have statewide mentorship fellows staff that will deliver this training. Our contractor is not public yet, but we will be able to share that probably within the next several weeks. And then those education service center fellows will redeliver this training to EPP staff that kind of oversee the field-based experience. That would be one pathway of training. District and campus leaders that oversee mentoring programs and the partnerships with EPPs. That'd be a second pathway. And then I should have gone the opposite order. Pathway one would be the field supervisors, cooperating and host teachers, and mentors. So this training can also help satisfy the statutory requirements and the requirements in the Texas Administrative Code to train these individuals as well, should the different entities want to use it. So we know that those field supervisors, cooperating and host teachers, and mentors have some similarities in their roles, but it also looks very different. So this might be like 3 mini pathways or one kind of like some core modules with some differentiated modules as well. And one thing that I would want to note here is that this field supervisor training will be a refresh for the current field supervisor training that is available. And ultimately that would, position these individuals to provide support to our pre-service and early service teachers at really like the end kind of stakeholder that we are looking at here. And so then on the next slide, thanks for that question about the contractor. This is kind of our path to launch. We've been project planning for a while now, really like coming out of those teacher vacancy task force recommendations, thinking about how to potentially implement this. When those bills didn't pass, again, we were able to dedicate some funding given the need that we identified. We will be executing our contract, as I just mentioned, in the next several weeks, and be happy to share that information with you. And then over the second semester, really, of this school year, the contractor will create these trainings. And then in school year 25-26, we'll pile up that training with some LEAs, train ESC staff simultaneously, our education service and our staff, and then work on developing some of that EPP training. So we're trying to stagger the trainings. The pilot will just focus on that first pathway and second pathway of kind of the mentorship roles and the district level, and then the following year, the EPP level. And then the vision is this will be delivered through ESCs starting in school year 26-27. And across the bottom there, you see like we would love stakeholder engagement throughout this process. And that's one of the reasons I'm coming in front of you today. On the next slide, we got a couple of questions. One, I am new to this structure and new to this group. I would love to continue engaging and getting input throughout the process. So first question, would you all like to continue learning about this training and providing input feedback on its development? And if so, I would love the opportunity to continue meeting with you all. And then, oh, great. Okay. that is wonderful to hear. And then also, as we're thinking about this initially, and we can provide, really today was meant to be a very high level overview to kind of gauge interest. Are there particular areas based on what you've heard so far and, challenges and opportunities you're seeing in the space that you really want to dig into? I am thinking over the course of the next several months, we'll start developing, working with our contractor to start developing this training. So I think putting some of those materials and decisions in front of you all for feedback would be great. But I would want to hear are there things that you would like to hear about? Okay, so I see, thank you, Elizabeth, projected costs and delivery mode. Great, we can bring that back. Feel free to come off of mute or put anything in the chat.
As a quick question, is this designed to meet the new TAC code requirements about the updated field supervisor training?
Correct, yes, and that was one of the other needs from which this kind of project arose. Mm-hmm.
Liz, in particular, what we've been thinking about is we've gotten questions from preparation programs around, given the updated requirements in new 228 around informal observations. Is there also an opportunity to provide more resources, training, and support for field supervisors around best practices around those, both formal observations and informal observations? That was also part of kind of thoughts in that redesign.
Great, and Kevin, I see your note there on teacher feedback on development of the training. So we've got some plans in place as well that we can share with you all. At a high level, we're thinking about utilizing teacher leadership fellowship as one place, and we've got some stakeholder advisory committees that we'll be putting together as well, and kind of scheduling that kind of over the course of over the course of development. In addition to this group in particular, we're really hoping y'all would be open to that. Hi, Holly. Good to see you. I see you got your hands.
Yes, good to see you too. I was just curious because I saw the TAA that went out about this pilot that you're doing preceding this statewide training launch. I think that went out in early September. And I know you mentioned that, of course, the bills didn't pass, but you were able to dedicate some funding to this effort. I was curious what funding you were able to identify. Was that the federal Title II funding or was there something else?
Great question. That was ESSER funding that we were able to leverage.
ESSER. Okay. Okay, gotcha. And then the TAA that was sent out, it says TEA anticipates 1.65 million of statewide funding for cycle 4. However, the funding is dependent upon final appropriations from the Texas legislature during the 89th and 90th legislative sessions. So I was curious about that.
Great question. That is specifically for the mentor program allotment.
Okay.
This is the allotment that runs directly to districts for supporting first and second year teachers with mentorship activities. So it's connected to this project and work. But this is a training that will be developed beyond, districts could fulfill the training requirement for the mentor program allotment by participating in this in this training, but they're not the same thing.
Okay, gotcha. So the pilot is for this statewide training program.
Yeah, we will utilize some of our districts that are participating in the mentor program allotment to pilot some of this training content. And we ask districts to identify their interest in partaking in that pilot in their applications for the mentor program allotment.
Okay, thank you.
I have a question, and I'm sorry, but my hand raise never works in these Zooms. I don't know why. It's like it doesn't come up. So I don't know why, but I apologize for just busting out. Do you anticipate reopening any rulemaking related to mentor programming during this process?
That's a great question. We just went through a rule amendment process and updated our rules effective, I think, February 2024. In the design so far, we haven't heard from stakeholders a need to update any of the mentor program allotment rules, but we are designing this training obviously within the parameters of the policy.
The past rules. Okay, the adopted rules. Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Oh, I have another question. Sorry, Allie. I know you said you're going to come back with information on the delivery mode, but is there anticipation of structuring this at all similarly to how the reading academies were done, where you kind of had that distributed delivery model? Not necessarily a centralized delivery model, but a distributed one.
Yeah, I would love to get into that delivery model. I think there's maybe a question in the chat about that as well at one of the upcoming sessions. But the idea here is that there's kind of a centralized development of this training, which is then redelivered through our education service centers. And then for entities that are interested in and feel like they've got the ability to kind of redeliver it themselves, there would almost be like a second TOT layer to this. So first is like ESCs could deliver to districts and EPPs, and then there could be a redelivery of the content from EPPs and districts. Should they feel ready and interested to do that? I think we've heard from stakeholders across the state, especially with the mentor program allotment of like, we don't have the capacity in-house to do this. We would like to continue working with someone to redeliver this. So that I think that's a great area to kind of get feedback from this group and other stakeholders as we continue to build out that delivery model.
And I'll put this in the chat, but I'm assuming there'll be some kind of evaluative component for the training, and that might include some feedback from those who undergone the training, as well as perhaps the folks that are mentored.
Correct. Yes.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you.
Well, I would love, and I could talk about this until noon, but I think I might get some anger some colleagues in the process, because I know I am the first but not the only agenda item here. But really the intention today was to come and see, is this an area of interest, kind of get some ideas of topics of interest, some initial questions, and then I can work with Marilyn and Jess and the rest of our ed prep team to figure out when I can come back and meet with this group. So thanks so much.
Thanks, Allie. We appreciate it. And not to provide a spoiler for a topic that Marilyn has on the agenda later in the day, but we are going to talk a little bit more on the concept of developing kind of focus topics for additional stakeholder input. So this sounds like a focus topic of interest for this group. So thanks, Allie. We appreciate it. And thanks, Ricky. with that, well, Ali and Ricky have provided their email addresses too. We'll share that out also in our follow-up in case folks have additional areas for engagement. And then with that, wanted to do a quick preview before we dive more deeply into topics into our December, not September, our December SBEC meeting. We are currently slated for a meeting on December 5th and 6th. We are still finalizing with the board chair if given as we finalize the agenda, if we will hold a 2-day meeting or hold a 1-day meeting on December 6th, but we should have information on that shortly. I will name that, the benefit of us holding this meeting earlier in the cycle between meetings is that we have an opportunity to get meaningful feedback from you all around items that will be going to the board for proposal. But that also means that there's some final parts of the agenda that are still being finalized. And so we certainly anticipate 3 proposal items being placed on the December agenda, which we're going to spend some time discussing further today, and then are still working to finalize items for discussion. But we do intend to have the agenda posted before the Thanksgiving holiday for folks to be able to review. With that, I'm going to turn it over to DeMarco to talk a little bit more on 231, which is one of those proposal items.
Good morning, everyone. I'm excited to talk a little bit about Chapter 231, the Subchapter F proposal item. You can go to the next slide, Jess. So I would be remiss if I did not have a slide that's specifically dedicated to the stakeholder engagement that staff has done almost over the past year related to this particular item to kind of get us to this place of bringing a proposal item to the board. And a special call out to the EPSG Special Populations Working Group who have attended each of those meetings. I know we often laugh about how many drafts of this particular worksheet we've gone through, but y'all, there's been a significant amount of work and just conversation and commitment to the proposal item that you've seen in your pre-work. So as we've engaged with stakeholders, a couple of priorities to name here. We've really been grounded in this need to provide clarity via the Chapter 231 rule text, and also really attempting to develop a streamlined Texas version of a content competency worksheet that emphasizes demonstration and also provides needed flexibility to our educators. And then lastly, a priority has been to consistently address SBEC questions and feedback as they come in SBEC meetings. And then I also have here just the stakeholder groups that we've engaged with over time. In the item, there's really an extensive list of stakeholder meetings and the topics of those meetings for your review. In the next slide, jumping right into what we actually discussed at the September meeting. So during that meeting, we provided the board with an updated draft rule text that reflected July meeting SBEC and stakeholder feedback. And we also provided an updated draft of the Texas Content Competency Worksheet for special education teachers of record, grades EC through 12. So during the September meeting, if you had an opportunity to watch that meeting, or if you haven't, I highly suggest you do, because I think there was a really, really robust conversation and dialogue with the SBEC around what they wanted to see in this Texas worksheet. They provided feedback around documentation and portability of the worksheet. They asked for some clarity around exactly what is a first-year teacher. When we mention the first-year teacher, what does that mean and how would they engage with the worksheet? There were some pushes around point values related to the Science of Teaching Reading exam and reading academies. And then board members really went into a deep conversation around the weight of point values and how to establish quality measures within the worksheet. I would say that was a bulk of the conversation with our SBEC last September. And then lastly, we kind of closed out that conversation with the SBEC giving staff feedback to include closely related fields within the worksheet. The updated draft of the worksheet that was shared with you via your pre-work has an updated worksheet format that now includes a new Section A in response to SBEC feedback around documentation and thinking through some of the identifying information that would need to be present on that worksheet. There's clarifying language related to a first-year teacher in Section E. We've attempted to, again, clarify who these folks are and what that would mean for them filling out the worksheet. We've created a sort of tiered point value system for the STR and Science of Teaching. That's the same thing, the STR and Reading Academies. And we've attempted to establish some PD quality measures. We heard that loud and clear from the board that it's important to consider if we're going to have PD count as a point generating opportunity for educators within this worksheet, then what are the quality measures that we need to put in place here? And then lastly, you'll notice that we do have language that includes closely related fields within the worksheet. On the next slide, just to call out, y'all, one kind of lasting question that we have is really, well, given that the worksheet essentially is in a pretty good place between staff, stakeholders, and we've addressed SBEC feedback and are looking forward to presenting that to the board, there's still this question around what's the kind of appropriate rule text to provide that clarity that we initially sought when revising the Chapter 231 Subchapter F rule text. So the rule text that you see on the screen is the recommendation from staff. This is what we provided to the SBEC at the last meeting. This is what you see in the draft proposal item. This rule text really specifies content competency requirements for all special education teachers of record. And it points all special education teachers of record to the figure. So the worksheet is, as you see here, is being indicated as a figure. However, there have been some concerns really that this draft rule text is not clear. The rules aren't clear around different sections applying to different folks, and that there could be an opportunity to actually clarify, which sections apply to the different sets of folks that are mentioned within the worksheet. So the draft rule text, the alternate option that you see here on the screen, is an attempt to address some of those concerns and provide another option for review. So this option here, again, specifies the content competency requirement that's specific to all special education teachers of record. However, different from the recommendation that you saw on the previous slide, this option bifurcates between previous content competency demonstration via house. So that's why you'll see the D and the E here, with D being specific to those folks who previously demonstrated content competency. That is a tongue twister. Content competency through via house, and then E would be for folks who had not previously demonstrated that content competency via house before 9/1/2025. Also within this particular option, there are specific callouts to sections in the figure. For example, you see in D that, for our folks who previously qualified for House, there's a call out to sections B and F. And then for everyone else, there's a call out to sections C and E. Now, I do want to share that, staff's recommendation hadn't been to specifically call out these folks here because we think that the worksheet does that, and that's what we shared with the board. However, we do want to acknowledge the concern here and wanted to provide another option and have worked with stakeholders to kind of vet this option as well. In the next slide, so here's where we have an opportunity for questions. So really wondering, what questions do you have about the worksheet? And also really this last question here, given that we have two options for draft rule text, what thoughts or feedback do you have around the options for draft rule text? Holly, I see your hand up. I think I know what your question is.
You never know. You never know. I could surprise you. Well, I just wanted to thank you for the alternate rule text, because we actually, TCTA is one of the groups that has raised this pretty consistently, and kind of our thought process on being explicit in the rules is that without that spelled out in the rules, you're not going to know that certain folks are grandfathered, because essentially that's what we're doing with folks who had previously met house. So it's sort of in the name of transparency and people being able to know that, from the face of the rule text without having to go into a figure to find that out, that certain folks are grandfathered. That's really our main push, to have that spelled out in the rule text. And I appreciate y'all coming up with some just fabulous language.
Other questions? I saw your comment in the chat, Tricia.
DeMarco, I apologize. Also, my hand doesn't work either. I'm sorry. I had a question, but I also wanted to follow up with Holly. We agree at TASPA with Holly. I understand that we understand that the worksheet is part of the rule, but we also feel like districts are always more comfortable with seeing it in rule, because then when somebody asks them for proof, it's so much easier and they are believed more. I hate to use that word, but when something is in part of a rule that they can share. And so we're also more comfortable with that language and that verbiage being part of an actual rule as opposed to part of a worksheet. So thank you for that. My other question is just clarifying on the first year teachers. So are you saying, as part of section E, if they're a first year teacher, they meet these bullets, they don't need any type of permit or anything to cover that? They get that whole year runway to meet the standard. Is that what you're saying?
That's correct. Yep. So they would get that whole year runway to either pass a PACT exam, receive additional PD, or even get the certification.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
And Kathy, to clarify, they would need to have the special education.
Right.
Yeah.
It would just be
That's
the content competency demonstration.
Yeah, that I got. Okay, thanks.
Okay. Thanks, y'all.
Thanks everyone for that feedback. We really appreciate it and everyone's collaboration. With that, I will turn it over to Beth to talk Chapter 235, or Educator Standards.
All right, thanks, Jessica. Thanks, DeMarco. Good morning, everybody. I am here with you once again to talk about Educator Standards. So excited to talk about this. Here we go. Just in case we needed to ground here in which standards we're talking about, you all know that there are two sets of educator standards. So there is the standards that are in Chapter 235, and those apply to pre-service teachers. So they outline the curriculum and training requirements. They set standards for the certification exams and certification requirements, as well as observation for pre-service teachers. Then we have the standards in Chapter 149, and those are subject to commissioner rulemaking, not rulemaking through SBEC, and those are standards for practicing teachers. If you've looked at the two standards side by side, they're very similar in the language and the scope of the work, but I have an animation here. Jessica, if you just click. We're just going to be talking about the Chapter 235 standards today, applicable to pre-service teachers. So almost a year ago to this date, we had our first meeting with the SBEC appointed Educator Standards Advisory Committee. And just a reminder of the diversity of this group, we received a lot of applications for 45 positions on this committee. And we looked for folks with expertise in math, English language arts and reading, general pedagogy. We selected teams that represented 15 regions across the state. They came from all different fields in education. So we really had this depth of expertise in this panel, because the work really is important. I think we can all agree that the standards do apply to a lot of things in education. So the makeup of this group was important. Some reminders about why the board is considering these updates to the standards. The primary driver were the changes in legislation. So 3 key pieces of legislation. The ever-present House Bill 1605, which outlines the requirements for training in open education resource materials for teachers and pre-service teachers to receive training in being skilled users of those materials. Additionally, House Bill 159, which relates to educating all students. So using instructional strategies, evidence and research-based that apply to all students. And then finally, understanding best instructional practices in digital literacy. Additionally, there were recommendations and standards from the Educator Standards Advisory Committee that set unified expectations. So if you look at the current 235 standards, they are grade banded, but the language is really similar across those standards. So this new set sets out standards for all teachers, all classroom teachers, grades EC through 12. It includes best practices in preparation, delivery, assessment, classroom management. So creating that positive learning environment. Knowledge of students, because it is so important, is embedded throughout these standards. And then these rigorous expectations for content knowledge, professionalism, and then a continuous improvement and reflection on your teaching practice. Additionally, we've heard from the field and from the board to update these professional expectations with this emphasis on ethical behavior for teachers to engage in that continuous improvement, and then to recognize the teacher's role as a professional within community. So those interactions with community stakeholders is called out in these standards as well. So as this committee worked on the standards between November and March, they brought a set back in April to the board. These are some of the broad changes that were seen when we brought these standards for discussion, the first discussion in April. The standards moved from 6 to 5 standards. In doing this, it combines assessment and instructional delivery under one set, and then embedded knowledge of students throughout the standards rather than having it be separate. As terms of instructional material, so the committee worked really hard to incorporate language from the bill to include the knowledge and skills that teachers need to use high quality instructional materials. And then for instructional preparation, this also includes preparation practices grounded in cognitive science. So all of the things teachers need to do to prepare for instruction. And you can see most of that is located in the Standard 2 instructional preparation. This also includes content-specific pedagogy. So if you look in the standard for content pedagogy, there is general content pedagogy, and then there's content specific for reading language arts as well as for math. And then finally, there's a real emphasis throughout these standards in educating all students. This includes knowledge of disability categories, and then throughout the standards, you'll see practices that make learning meaningful and make it accessible to all the students. But we didn't stop there. We brought the standards in April with those broad changes. And in April, we heard feedback from the field and from the board. And so we went back, we revised, and we brought them back in July. And we didn't end there. We got feedback from the board and from the field and brought them back again in September. I will name that a lot of the feedback we heard was really around clarity and some of the new language around the use of open education resource materials, as well as initial lesson design. So we've worked to retool that language according to the feedback that we've heard. So the last discussion was in September, and we heard additional feedback, and we've made some updates that I'm going to share with you now to help us get this ready to bring to proposal in December. So here we go. So the board highlighted pretty much 3 big items to change in the standards and to update. So they had a really good discussion in September. And first, we heard from the board that we need to more clearly define and differentiate lesson design, instructional preparation, and lesson internalization. So it was important to provide clarity around these things. I won't read these to you. I can give you the summary of them though. Instructional preparation. So setting that out, we defined instructional preparation as all of the things that a teacher needs to do to prepare for instruction. This includes the teacher's knowledge of her students or his students, how those students learn, what those students bring to the classroom. So first and foremost, the teacher needs to have knowledge of their students. And then the instructional preparation also includes or could include lesson design, selection of materials, customization of materials, and evaluation of those materials. And then the lesson internalization that prepares you to teach a specific lesson. The intent with this definition is to really acknowledge all of the things that go into instructional preparation and all of the skills that a teacher needs to have, including that knowledge of students and student learning. We also included a definition for lesson plan design. In your standards right now that you have, it reads lesson design. This recent update was made to more clearly align it with House Bill 1605 language, just so that terminology is clear. But lesson plan design is a part of instructional preparation, and it's the process that a teacher goes through to create planned learning experiences. If you look at this, we aimed to give a comprehensive understanding of all of the things included in lesson design. If you see something missing, please do let us know. You know, we want to get this right. And then finally, lesson internalization. So whether a teacher is designing their own lessons or whether they're using instructional materials provided by their district, internalization is something that teachers go through that's specific to teaching that lesson or unit. So it's really all that rehearsal, solving the problems before you give them to your students, identifying areas for misconception, planning when you're going to give formative assessments, all of that good stuff. So again, if you see something in internalization that is missing, please do let us know. Okay, moving on. We also heard from the board that we still needed to further clarify selection and use of instructional materials, specifically around the teacher's role, the district's role. So you can see three major changes where we addressed this. In September, what we presented to the board was in the preamble here, and that's on page 14. So the language was, they assume that practicing teachers only engage in initial lesson design when working in a grade level and subject area for which high quality instructional materials are not available, or when directed by their district. The language shifts. So what you have in front of you, what you'll see in December, is they assume that practicing teachers are aware of the open education instructional materials. They customize materials as directed by their district, engage in initial lesson design when they're directed by their district. So really clarifying teachers' role and district's role, especially around selection and customization of materials. Secondly, you'll see this in standard B2. This is also on page 14. The original language, or the language we brought in September, was around the evaluation of instructional materials, where teachers would select the highest quality district approved option to prepare for instruction, and then prioritizing OER and SBOE approved materials when available. We shortened this one up for December. Teachers evaluate instructional materials and then select or customize the highest quality district approved option to prepare for instruction. Again, spotlighting, the board felt customization is an important skill. It brings in that level of teacher autonomy that we don't want to lose, because teachers are the experts with that unique group of students and need to know how to adjust materials for their students. Finally, we shortened this next one. This is standard B3, page 15. And this is where teachers understand initial lesson design process. And then we have this language in here: when instructing in grade levels and subjects where there's not SBOE approved tier 1 high quality instructional materials available, engage in initial lesson design. So this one's also shortened up some. So teachers still understand that initial lesson design. And when the district approved materials are not available, and when directed by their district, they engage in initial lesson plan design using the science of learning concepts. And finally, we heard from the board that we were kind of limiting language in here by just saying grade level standards, grade level expectations throughout, because it didn't necessarily apply to secondary teachers. So 9 places in the standards, we changed the language to read grade or course level, and hoping that that is a easy or elegant solution to that, so that we have expectations for secondary and primary teachers. So those are the big shifts you'll see. Happy to take any questions before we prepare these to bring to the board in December. And real quick, before I answer your questions, I want to just personally thank everyone in this group who has just helped us develop these standards through your feedback, through showing up at the meetings, and through your conversations. So thank you very much for participating in this.
Hi, Carrie, Griffith, TSTA. I have a question about, can you please re-explain the reason that you are using lesson design sometimes and lesson plan design sometimes? So you use lesson design in your instructional preparation.
Yes, thank you, Carrie.
But we're not defining lesson design. So just please explain why you're using it in different places differently.
This is a recent change that we've made after talking to some of the government relations and legal experts. And so the reason it reads lesson design in some places is that we haven't updated it yet to read lesson plan design. So the version you will see in December, that language will be changed to lesson plan design.
And are you understanding lesson plan design and lesson design to essentially mean the same thing, but you believe
Yes.
that lesson plan design is clearer language?
Correct.
Okay.
Correct.
Thank you.
Anything else we should be thinking about related to these standards? Well, if you do think of something, please do reach out. I just have a couple additional things to share with you about our next steps. Oh, Holly.
Hi.
Hey, Holly.
There's back to this, hold on a minute, back to this issue of clarifying around when high quality instructional materials are or are not available.
Mm-hmm.
There's one more standard where that is mentioned, but I don't see it being addressed in this new language. So I just wanted to draw your attention to that. And I can.
Thanks, Holly. What's the name of the standard? Is it in content?
Yes.
Okay.
It's D1 little I.
Okay.
I'll put it in the chat, but again, it's talking about, the demonstrating a thorough understanding of OER when the materials are available. And so I think some clarification there would be helpful.
Appreciate that, Holly. I will take a look.
Okay, thank you.
Holly, the tricky one with that language, just for context, that tracks what's in the statutory language, like explicitly. So it might be, if you've got any like thoughts or recommendations on ways to further clarify that, just given that we're trying to align with this statute as well, any thoughts you have would be super helpful.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, yeah, I'll look at it. Thank you.
I just want to thank you guys for making these changes. I'm going to read them once the agenda comes out. So I'm not giving my 100% thumbs up quite yet because I want to like dig in and compare. But I certainly see that there's a high responsiveness to stakeholder feedback and some of the concerns that TSTA and TCEP had. So I just really want to just express appreciation for some of these changes, because just on face value here, it looks like there's like there are some good changes. So I appreciate that.
Thanks very much, Carrie. That's really nice to hear. Thanks, Tricia. And yeah, do reach out with additional feedback. You know, we're happy to hear from you. So going forward, I have one more slide, I think. Yes. If you were at CSOT, I just want to call out, we changed the date for the EPP webinars. We wanted to make sure that we had taken these through proposal before we started, you know, doing webinars for EPPs. So you will see a notification in November in our newsletter for an EPP webinar that's going to be the second week of December, likely. So just be on the lookout for that. And then we will bring these to proposal in December, and then we will continue to develop guidance, tools, and resources to share with the field. So thank you all for your continued engagement. Just really appreciate you.
Thanks, Beth. And one pitch is if folks are doing a deeper read through the updated draft standards that we shared out as pre-work, if there's any other feedback that you have, we're aiming to finalize our agenda items here kind of within the next week. So if you have any additional feedback that you're planning on sharing, if you wouldn't mind sharing that within the next week with us, that'd be incredibly helpful. Thanks. All right, with that, I will turn it over to Sarah.
Good morning, everyone. Just some quick updates on the Chapter 249 proposal that we hope to bring to the board at the December meeting. There have not been a ton of changes to the text from what was sent out and given to the board at the last meeting, but these are kind of the highlights, all of which were discussed and informed by the last board meeting. So the three big things are in the definition of solicitation, where we specifically reference their grooming behaviors. We've added the words considered in context and on the totality of the circumstances, including but not limited to, which I believe was Member Coleman's suggestion. So that has been incorporated there. And then the next big change is under our mandatory minimum sanction for testing violations. We've added back in the word intentionally, and we cite to the definition that's found in the Educator Code of Ethics, because I think the board had a kind of a thorough discussion of what they mean by intentionally, right? How it can kind of go two ways, which our definition captures in the Code of Ethics. So we cite to the Code of Ethics. And then I think it was also brought up during a public comment about how we were citing to the violations in Chapter 101 of the Commissioner, and also a section of 249, and how they thought that the cite to 249 kind of broadened what was in the Commissioner's definitions of serious testing violations. So we've taken out that cite to 249, so it only cites to the Commissioner's definition of serious testing violations. And then the next one is just the addition of all the language there after the word notices. Basically, there was concern about, well, if you're sending things via electronic mail, like what are you going to mail? And it has never been explicitly clear in our rules how we comply with Section 2001.054 of the Government Code. So we're making it explicitly clear that all the initial notices, what we refer to as the 054 notices, which inform you of the allegations against you and of your right to explain the allegations, those will all be sent via certified or registered mail in compliance with the Government Code. So those are really the big highlights. But any thoughts or questions? And there's my email for any additional feedback. Oh, okay. Well, thank you, everyone. Have a good Friday.
Thanks, everyone. I think similarly here, I know that some folks at other members of your teams who joined some of our 249 stakeholder engagement sessions. So if you haven't yet had a chance to share some of that draft language with them, again, any feedback that you have on this final language, if you can share that with us in the next few days here, greatly appreciated as we work to finalize this item. All right. Well, with that, we're going to pivot away from topics that are on deck for the December meeting and talk about some additional ongoing work that staff is collaborating with the SBEC in the field on. So I'm going to turn it over to Ebony to talk a little bit more around the continuing approval review redesign.
Thanks, Jessica, and good morning, everybody. I am really excited to get to talk to you all today about our continuing approval review process and the EPF. I feel like we have been feeding y'all pieces here and there, and so today I have the opportunity to really put together this beautiful story about how you all in the field have worked together to design this framework of effective preparation, being able to take the knowledge from the field, the requests that we've heard from EPPs, from LEAs, from you all as a working group, and from the board, to be able to develop and implement this effective preparation framework and then operationalize it. So just a few reminders that really the aim of the EPF is to establish this clear and common vision for our educator preparation best practices. And this was a result of really rich experiences of the knowledge from our LEAs, from our EPPs, from you all as EPSG and the working group, to better understand the knowledge of the educator preparation programs and what was needed in order to have strong candidates and really strong student outcomes. So the EPF is here to capture the most foundational practices that's essential for all of these Texas EPPs across program types and context. And so if you look at the EPF, again, this is a little over 2.5 years worth of work that was been for the field, by the field. And much like Beth said earlier, I have to pause and thank everybody on this call that was part of the EPF working group that really put in the time and the effort to make sure that we were capturing the needs of our districts and the needs of our programs in order to come up with this framework. And so part of the development of the EPF was really looking at that intensive stakeholder feedback. And as we've said from the beginning, the feedback and really this collaborative practice doesn't just stop at the building of the EPF, but also looking at how we operationalize this in the field. So the framework is really strongly aligned to the state vision for effective schools, effective districts, and again, looking at these best practices, where each of these 5 levers are going to contain those essential actions and key practices that we know when they're implemented together yields high quality EPPs and is really this aspirational framework of what we want to build. And this is just one example of that philanthropic engagement to be able to best support stakeholders and really what we continue to hear from our overarching field from LEAs and EPPs. So you may remember that after the development of the EPF, last year we were able to dig a little bit more into being able to see what a quality review pilot would look like. And this was a way for the SBEC, for the field, and for TEA to be able to see what are ways that we can look at programs to be able to provide more qualitative and substantive feedback around the practices and really get some critical input to our SBEC about the importance of quality review and reflections upon the experiences. So last July during the work session, we were able to have these 5 programs come and speak about their experience, what they learned, and some recommendations that we could potentially use moving forward to develop a Texas-specific quality review. So, sorry, just give you an aside. So then in our July board meeting, the SBEC directed TEA staff to begin working on the implementation of the EPF through 3 specific areas. Our first area was looking at that redesign of the continuing approval review process, and we are well into the work of being able to redesign one that is specific for the needs of our Texas EPP. Again, here in just a second, I'm going to talk to you all about some opportunities that we have coming up to be able to engage and provide input and feedback on this redesign process. The second part is this creation of a vetted third-party technical assistance and professional service provider list, in the hopes that as we are providing the substantive feedback to the field, that we're also finding ways to help build capacity through experts in those technical assistance by providing technical assistance. And then finally, I'm really excited to talk about the way that we are going to look at the commendations. So this again is an opportunity to really highlight and showcase our programs that have strong practices and be able to really point to some key areas throughout the field where we're seeing people achieve this high quality preparation for their EPP candidates. And so we're going to offer several different routes where we're able to elicit feedback from the field, have conversations with the board, with you all as EPSG, as well as various other stakeholders, as we walk through the building of this redesign process. It's really important for there to be several opportunities to learn, one, how this review is conducted, in particular in different programmatic models, knowing that we have a large diverse group of EPPs throughout the state. And so in order to do this, we'll be running 2 different pilot studies. The first that will kick off here in spring of 2025 with 5 different EPPs across the state. Again, you'll notice that our grouping will have traditional IAGs, we'll have ESCs. We are excited to invite some of our ISDs in there as well to be able to observe the mechanisms, be able to debrief, and really hear what's working well and where we may need to make adjustments that will best serve our EPPs. We will run a second pilot that will take place during the 2025-2026 school year. Again, still being in an observational mode to see what is working, as well as being able to identify where those critical components of this review that is going to provide the most opportunity for continuous improvement for programs. Additionally, we will be looking at different areas for feedback on the rubrics. The rubric is going to be what is provided that is driving these review processes that will take place during both pilot years and then once we scale up to be across the state of Texas. And then we'll also have an opportunity to be able to bring in Texas reviewers. Thank you, Jessica. So one of the areas that we have heard from the field and from the SBEC is this recommendation to be able to bring on a cadre of Texas reviewers. Again, I'm a little bit biased. I think Texas is by far the best state. And knowing that we have different needs and specifications of what our quality looks like. And so being able to bring in people that are essentially boots on the ground from LEA leadership, EPP leadership, organizations, and so forth and so on, that can really speak to the high quality needs of our teacher preparation. So we are going to work with the field to recruit and train this cadre of Texas reviewers. In early conversations with the board, and again, being able to understand from some of our other programs that were part of the earlier pilot, just how much experience those with Texas knowledge bring to the table. We want to make sure that we are being responsive to that feedback by being able to bring in these Texas reviewers. This also provides us a way to strengthen and really build capacity for our state. As we talk about these strong partnerships, being able to see how all of these different entities can work together in order to make sure that we are putting the best foot forward as we prepare our teacher candidates. And so again, this process is going to start with stakeholder. Well, it's going to start and finish with stakeholder engagement. So it is very imperative that we have stakeholder engagement throughout the process to make sure that this is for the field and by the field and well aligned with you all's needs. So the process is going to begin with stakeholder feedback sessions. So this month, because it is officially November, and we will be taking some deep dives into the rubrics. Again, looking at input, being able to get feedback on what those look like, what those sound like, and ensuring that we are capturing the most important aspects of ed preparation. There will also be some more timely communication that are coming out about additional opportunities for feedback sessions that will take place in spring of 25 as well as fall of 26. The second part of this is being able to prioritize some key convenings for broader communication. If any of you all were at CSOT, that was our first opportunity to really socialize about CAR and stakeholder engagement. We will also be looking for other opportunities to be able to plug in with different organizations, different convenings, different conferences, so that we can truly be transparent in this work in the development of our redesign CAR. And then finally, being able to share these key resources that exemplify the quality practices throughout the collaboration with programs and with their partners. Because we do want to ensure that we are accounting for the diversity of the needs in the state. So we have immediate stakeholder engagement coming up here in November. There will be 3 different opportunities. The first 2 opportunities, November 7th, will take place from 2 to 3 o'clock p.m., November 14th from 10 to 11 o'clock p.m. There was a link to the registration that came out with the communication, and we will make sure with the follow-up communication that we will resend that link out. So if you want to participate, you are able to. And during this time, we hope to accomplish a few things. One, we'll be receiving or wanting to get feedback around the strong vision and mission of the car redesign, ensuring that there's clarity around the why for this shift and an understanding of what we hope the new outcome is, again, based on that directive from SBEC as well as feedback from the field. The second part is to give you an opportunity to have an earlier sneak peek at the review rubric. Again, being able to provide that feedback and elicit input, not only from the pilot programs, but as well from LEAs, from EPPs, other stakeholders, around what we're looking for and ensuring that we are hitting those highest priority areas for review. And then finally, being able to start the work around looking at the threshold for quality. So across our essential actions, across all of the different levers for both the EPF, and being able to make sure that we are stamping the highest leverage items that is going to lead us to that continuous improvement and ensuring that our teacher candidates are day one ready. And then there will also be a third opportunity if you're unable to make the 14th or the 7th and you want to be a part of this group, you are also welcome to join us on the 18th. There's a star next to the 18th because we are also inviting our LEA partnerships to be able to provide input here. The 18th will be where you'll see a heavier presence of LEAs, but also wanted to make sure that you are aware that you do have that option. And then I think
Ebony, there was
more.
a question in the chat. Is it the same content on all 3 days? So someone should choose one of the 3 to join?
Yes, ma'am. Sorry. Thank you for calling that out. Yes, it'll be the same content all 3 days. We just wanted to make sure that you all have options. I know that calendars get filled pretty quickly. And so we tried to spread out the times in case one would work better for you than the other. And finally, just being able to provide a little bit of logistics. Again, if you are interested, please feel free to reach out to me at ebony.love@tea.texas.gov. And then I will make sure that you have the link and that you are registered. We will be sending out a little bit of pre-work, which is just review materials that you'll have beforehand, where you have the opportunity to review the rubric with some guided questions prior to coming into that stakeholder feedback. I should also note that this is not a one and done opportunity. So if for some reason you are unable to attend in November, we will have other opportunities throughout the spring that you will be able to join as well. And I will pause here for questions. All right, thank you.
Thanks, Ebony. I would just stamp kind of 2 immediate calls to action here, y'all. Again, kind of, I know we're about to get to Maryland's EPSG stakeholder feedback session, and I know in the feedback that there was a lot of interest in folks leaning in and collaborating around the continuing approval review as a focus topic. And so just stamping here these upcoming stakeholder engagement sessions as an opportunity, but knowing that we'll also want to continue to leverage this group going forward. The other thing that Ebony named that I wanted to just reinforce further, given the connections that each of you has across the field. We have contracted with TPI US to redesign the review process and administer the redesigned review, but they will be doing that through the training and kind of deployment of Texas reviewers. And so we are going to start the recruitment process for Texas reviewers this month. And so we'll be sending communication via the EPP newsletter, but if you have interest in becoming a Texas reviewer for the purpose of the continuing approval review process, or you know folks who might be interested in this, we are thinking both about experts in the EPP space as well as LEA leadership. This would be a great opportunity for professional development. So just stamping that as you communicate with stakeholders within your networks to reinforce this as an exciting upcoming opportunity.
And to Jessica's point, we will have more than one opportunity to apply for that opportunity. So if this year is not the year, we'll have upcoming opportunities as well.
Awesome. Thanks. Well, then with that, I'll turn it over to Marilyn.
Thank you, boss. Good morning, everyone. It's wonderful to see all of you, and I've been misbehaving and bringing all the hype in the chat till it was my time to be on better behavior and present today. So I'm really excited to have the opportunity to be back again with this esteemed group of collaborators in the work to talk again about the EPSG stakeholder experience. Just when you go to the next slide, many of you have been on this journey of conversation with me for quite a while, and were instrumental in the first round of feedback through a survey that allowed me to lead a very important afternoon work session topic with our board, just about the purpose of stakeholder experience and how we can continue to improve that. So I'm grateful, first of all, for where we started and how we've been able to get to this point. You remember that we had our last meeting on August the 30th, and then after that, I gave you a little bit of Maryland free time before I reached out again with another survey that you folks were kind enough to respond to. We sent that post-work survey your way on September 24th. And kept it open until October the 18th. And so I am grateful as always. We got a ton of very thoughtful, helpful feedback. If you were with us at CSOT, we wanted to highlight and stamp the importance of making sure we have the folks who are critical partners in this work in the room with us, and to make sure that you know your voices are important and are necessary in these conversations. Just when you go to the next slide, from the very first round of stakeholder feedback about ways to improve this experience, we were able to bucket these, if you will, into three major areas of focus. So first of all, heard lots of feedback about the importance of updating our participant list, making sure we do our due diligence in further improving the actual experience when you come together with us for a meeting, to make sure you feel it was worthy of your time, that you had the right kinds of opportunities to really be in it, if you will, with us. And then also increased visibility, doing a better job of making sure we have a webpage, if you will, that rises up to the important contributions that this group makes and continues to make. And then also when we're using the term stakeholders in meetings with the SBEC in particular, that we're a little more explicit and we're naming names, and we're making sure that we're coming forward and honoring all of the many contributions that you all have made. You folks responded to the post-work survey, so I wanted to also just sort of elaborate here and highlight we were purposeful in the post-work survey in questions trying to get more at our next action steps. So for your just information, I tried to show you where it meant something for you to take the time to provide all that thoughtful feedback. And I've had the good fortune to read every comment, have a copy, hard copy where I've asterisked. And I appreciate just going ahead and moving me to the next slide, because this is the important part where, based on, once again, your very thoughtful feedback, we TEA staff have looked at that, and we think we've got some great recommendations on ways that we can proceed with this group that we are excited to rebrand as EPSG in the new year. And so I wanted to just highlight a couple of important things that we feel are going to address those three big bucketed areas. So first and foremost, in response to updating the participant list, it is our intent after this meeting, Marilyn Cook immediately has homework to reach out to every professional organization and make sure that we have established a point of contact. That will be the person that we make sure we send the Zoom meeting links to going forward so that every organization knows TEA has reached out and has provided that opportunity. In addition, you'll remember there were some questions in the survey where we asked you directly if there were additional representatives that you felt would be helpful to join the space. We got a lot of specific names of individuals, but also encouragement to, for example, have more alt-cert representatives involved, have more teachers, various staff from LEAs. So it is our intent also to act on the great recommendations that you gave us, but do some additional outreach there as well to bring more folks, if you will, into the fold. That is the stakeholder experience for EPSG. In making this amazing shift from EPAC, EPSG to EPSG in the new year, a couple of things that we wanted to make sure we named for you all. It's important to recognize that we are going to step away from what we would say is a membership list. Going forward with EPSG, we will no longer have what you would call an official roster of members, an exclusive club, if you will, of people. We are moving forward to a all voices are welcome. We're going to have a process in the new year where certainly we'll have a standing list of folks that we send the invites out to at professional organizations, but you're not limited to just the one person. There's another person that you feel it's important to have that person in the room. They are welcome to join the meetings. So we hope that move in and of itself, you will feel perhaps we are responding to comments and requests that have been made for. I've been here a long time. I feel like I started working at the agency with Moses. So for years, as more people wanted to have opportunities to make their voices known, to hear the conversations firsthand, and to feel like they have an opportunity to have input into the very things that impact them. So that's one big thing that we think will be helpful in addressing that bucket. In response to improving the actual stakeholder experience, we heard from multiple folks, and we've heard this comment for a while as well. It would be fantastic if in going into this new year, we could sort of land on some dates and go ahead at one time, send you all of the meeting dates and the Zoom links so you have them on your calendar ahead of time. And so worst case scenario, if something happens and we have to change a meeting date for some reason, you've got it, it's easy to update. And you don't have to really think about, is Marilyn going to be on it? And remember to send me the meeting invite. So we're going to commit to doing that as well. One thing I would say is we do want to do internally across our team, do one final check, if you will, of those meeting dates, the January 10th, March 14th, June 13th, August 8th, and October 10th. Check those dates and make sure they are doable. I will say to you folks, you can't see it because of my background, but I've got a hard copy where I have done asterisks and highlights and things for certain comments. And I'm very mindful of some folks made comments about we may not be back, we may be on spring break. We are hoping that with the dates and after we do the check, that we'll still be able to benefit from folks who can attend and meet on those days. And then you'll remember that the meetings are going to continue to be recorded. We're going to send pre-work. There's still going to be opportunities if you miss a meeting, that you will still have an opportunity to be involved in the process and provide feedback. One other thing before I move from this bullet, I would be remiss if I did not say out loud, I did indeed see the comment that one person had submitted about, does it have to be Fridays? Is there another possible day? And I'll tell you, we thought about this, and from one lens, it's been Fridays for a long time, usually selfishly for a couple of reasons. During a legislative session year, where many of us are having fun and frolic at the Capitol, Fridays don't seem to be the popular day where they want to see all of us in that building. And so it's usually worked out. And then also, Fridays are usually board meeting days. So when it's not an SBEC or an SBOE meeting, that date has sort of worked out. So we're going to ask you folks to sort of indulge us and continue the Friday theme, but We will likely over the course of next year during the legislative session year as well, kind of look back, and this would be a thing I think that we can revisit and get some feedback and think ahead as we're planning moving forward. So I didn't want to sit here and look and go, did Marilyn Cook read every comment? She really did a couple of times. So I wanted to just acknowledge that and thank the individual that provided that comment for raising it. Another thing that we heard, the importance of pre-work materials and agendas being sent to you in advance. I will tell you for this meeting, we didn't quite hit the 2-week mark, but it was largely because as we are working ahead, we had the benefit of getting items back from other reviewers. And so we wanted to wait and thought it was helpful to send you, if you will, the best, latest version of rule text for you to see prior to convening today so that we could hopefully capitalize, as we have been able to, on the great feedback that you were able to give us on that Chapter 231, 235, and 249 items. The other things, you gave us a ton of great positive feedback about a robust, healthy list. And then you helped me grow the list as reflected on the screen here of focus topics for 2025. The other thing that our team will work to do internally and norm on will be sort of a plan for the appropriate, if you will, and timely flow of when to place certain items on the agenda. Again, you all have been partners in this work with us for quite some time and have been great about when we reach out and go, is this an item? Is this something of interest? Do you have questions, concerns? And always we try to commit at the end of the current meeting that we're in to ask for questions, feedback, opportunities for what's a hot topic or something we need to make sure we build time in to talk about at the next meeting. So I'm hoping that you'll feel like your feedback is being taken seriously and looked at. Jess, if you don't mind going to the next slide, at the very top, that last bullet in response to increasing the visibility of stakeholder engagement. Now, this is the one where if things don't go well, Marilyn may not return from holiday break and you'll be going, the part of Marilyn's now being played by someone else. So I am committed to working with some folks who are much better at this than I am to getting a better looking webpage up and running so that at the start of the year, and so this may be round one at the start of the year with ways to continuously improve it, but that will reflect, now wait for this, it's going to have meeting dates on there, the meeting recordings with timestamps, and your eyes are not deceiving you. We are going to give you the meeting presentation decks. That alone, let me say it again slowly, we are going to share with you the long requested, long awaited meeting presentation decks. I know some people might go, thank you, Jesus, in the comments here pretty soon. So seriously, we have listened to you. We're going to do our due diligence and share that information and hope that that also continues the spirit of continuous improvement, transparency, open feedback, those things. And then lastly, we've talked about this already as we're laying out agenda items. If we're referencing stakeholders, we're going to say who those folks were in the room and make sure that you have the recognition that you deserve for being thoughtful partners and continuous partners in this work. Lastly, here at the bottom, you all gave a lot of also great feedback. I did it in 2 columns here, the EPSG stakeholder norms and expectations versus the TEA staff norms and expectations. You will see some commonality as we expected across the norms, but also got really great feedback on ways to further streamline these to get to the heart of how we want to show up at meetings each time, how we want to work with each other, and how we will continue to stay united in this process to make it keep getting better and better and better. So I'm personally excited about 2025. I got to pony up and deliver on some things, and I will do that before holiday break. But I just wanted to pause there and tell you all, thank you. We've talked about this a lot. I hope you feel we are taking your feedback seriously. and that we're wanting to continue to work with you. We're wanting to continue the conversations and to keep this moving in a positive direction. So that's all I had. I did want to pause and just see and give airtime to other folks who may have some feedback or comments. Holly Eaton, I saw your hand before it drops off, so you go first.
Okay, thank you, Marilyn. Back to the topics that will be addressed in next year. I think I'm looking at chapter 239, which I looked up. So that's the student services certificates. Was there something in particular there that?
So Holly, yes, ma'am. So if you'll remember, we did get some feedback. So I know at least one item, follow-up item that I have the opportunity to work on and come back on chapter 239. So the rules around the school counselor certificates. And you remember we had, when we were going through the process and the legislative changes, but then the board going, can we then look at all the other requirements and what's in place in lieu of that, having the 2 years of teaching experience? So that's one thing in chapter 239 that I know. The comment back in the feedback was 239 in general. So since that chapter also houses the other areas, we'll probably poll to see if there was something else on folks' minds. But I appreciate you asking that question.
Well, and I also wondered about the annual directors meeting. Yeah.
I got that feedback, and I will tell you, and so without outing whoever it was that said that specifically, long ago, Holly, over time, there used to be opportunities where we met with EPP leaders. And so I'm thinking that may be a hint at, is there an opportunity to make sure either that those folks are involved in the conversation? Well, Zach Roselle, let me be quiet because I might be making up a story. You go right ahead, sir.
No, that was me, Marilyn. You can call me out whenever you want. But yeah, you're exactly right. It was back when we would have annual director meetings. But Marilyn, kudos to you for the good work you're putting through this. Given that we're opening it up to much more representation and it's not a defined list, I think that serves really the purpose, right? One of the big things for the directors meetings was for everyone to be able to hear what was taking place, so you weren't getting segments or pieces. And so the way that you've got this formatted, I think that alleviates any concern that I would have. I think making it broader to the masses. And so can I ask a quick clarifying question with that?
Absolutely.
With EPPs, will the information be disseminated to professional organizations? So for like I Teach Texas, it would go to TACA, and then TACA would then send that information out to EPPs that are part of the membership list?
Yeah, Zach, that's definitely one way. I will tell you, internally, we've also talked about, since we're trying to make sure that EPPs in particular know what's going on, is it reasonable to just put the link in the EPP newsletter and go, this meeting is happening? So without me getting, I like to stay employed and I don't want my boss to have to call me into timeout later, but we're trying to just make sure, because there were repeat comments about all EPPs should have a voice and make sure that they know what's going on. And we use that newsletter for a lot of things. So Zach, we will make sure the ways in which we distribute those invites and encourage folks to share the information coming in the new year, that we're clear about. More voices are certainly welcome, and make sure we get that done. That's all I better say, so I don't get myself in trouble.
Love it. And yeah, thank you so much.
And one more question real quick, Marilyn, because I'm just curious. The reading academies are listed, and I'm kind of curious what that would be about, if you know.
Yeah, Holly, that's as of right now, and I'm looking to see if Ebony is still on the call, but we have a number of prep programs across the state who are now approved providers of the reading academies. And so we had a pilot of folks last year. There's now a set of approved providers. And I think our interest is just continuing to learn alongside those programs. And so that might be an area to both continue to learn about areas for refinement with those programs that are engaged in reading academies, and also an opportunity to kind of bring some of the learning from those programs that are offering reading academies to more prep programs.
So would you remind me again? So those are piloting. What's the timeline on that again?
So they piloted during the last academic year, and this year there's actually a set of EPPs that are approved providers of the reading academies. I think I saw Melissa come off mute. Melissa,
Yeah, and I was going to say the window is opening again for more programs to apply to become approved providers as well. Holly.
Sorry, I could not get my audio off fast enough, so thank you for that. But Holly, if you have further questions, if you don't mind sending me an email, I'm happy to chat with you about what that looks like as well.
Okay, thank you. Appreciate it.
One thing I would
No, go ahead, boss.
One thing I would name, as we're aiming to, open up our stakeholder engagement structures here, we're also aiming to leverage these focus topic spaces, right? To know that there are folks who have subject matter expertise or particular areas of interest. And so just naming here that broadening our stakeholder spaces, but also creating more opportunities for stakeholders to lean in around specific topics that they might have additional interest in or would like to be of support and collaborator with us as we move forward.
Y'all, that was my spiel. And you see how my boss has to keep tight reins on me because I'm acting like I'm auditioning for a character for Inside Out 3 or something. I don't know which emotion I'll be, but excitable maybe or something. I don't know. But I appreciate, again, just for a point of personal privilege for a second to you all. Every time I've reached out and asked, no matter how busy you were, you made time to give really, really thoughtful feedback. And so we couldn't have gotten here to this point without all of you continuing to hang in there with us and communicate and give feedback. So thank you for that very, very much.
Thanks, y'all. We appreciate everyone's feedback, and I think we'll appreciate your patience with us too as we kind of navigate through these updated stakeholder structures over the course of the next year. I imagine this group will get larger, right? And so we'll need to think about ways that we're, facilitating discussion, et cetera. And so just continue, in a spirit of continuous improvement, just any feedback that you continue to have about ways that we can make these spaces better, or as we try out new structures in the new year, that's always really appreciated. So that's the end of our formal content for today. Did want to pause and check. We didn't receive any additional questions in advance, but wanted to see if there was any additional questions or topics for discussion with the group. All right, y'all. Well then, thank you, everyone. Happy official kickoff of the holiday season. I hope you listen to Mariah Carey at least once today. And if you have any other questions or feedback, please reach out to us. Again, if you particularly have any feedback on any of the proposal language that we've discussed, we can hear from you in the next week or so. That'd be incredibly helpful for us. But appreciate it and look forward to seeing y'all soon.